What's going on, folks? All right, if you're new to bass fishing or you're thinking about bass fishing, this is the video for you. Welcome back to another episode of Horrible Anglers. All right, if you guys like my content, please subscribe below. Help a small YouTuber out. It would be greatly appreciated. But let's get on with the video. All right, so today I'm just gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna talk about the 3 baits that I highly recommend for new bass fishermen. Some of this information you guys probably already know, but this will definitely help the new anglers decide on which tackle to buy. Because we all know that going into the tackle warehouse is no small task. I mean, I've been bass fishing for 9 years, and I mean every time I go in there I still get confused. All right, so these 3 baits, it's basically, I'm basing them off of the ease of use and the ability to keep them longer, right? So we're not spending 12 bucks on a lure, casting it out there, second, third cast, you get it stuck in the rocks or the trees, and then you lose your money. All right, so this is keeping the brand new anglers in mind. All right, let's get into it. So the first bait that I want to recommend to the new angler, and even some of you seasoned anglers, first is the Berkeley Chapo, or the River Sea Whopper Plopper. All right, both of these baits are topwater baits. They're extremely simple to use. You just cast them out and you reel them back in. These tails flip and they make a plopping sound in the water. These baits, I've used both and they work tremendously. I mean, these are really good baits. I mean, they will catch you fish. And since they're topwater, you won't really get them snagged on anything unless you're casting them into the trees. Colors for clear waters, right? Depends on where you guys are fishing. Clear waters, I like to keep colors natural or get something that's translucent, see-through, right? For some reason, it works a lot better in clear waters. And for dirtier, murkier waters, I like to stick with darker colors, whether it's black, blue, red, whatever it may be. They seem to work better in muddier waters. Plus, bigger sizes. These are 90 millimeters. I think the next one up is 120, which would probably be better off in muddier waters. Oh, no. Whew, oh, another chunk, man. All right, so my next recommendation is the good old-fashioned, tried and true spinner baits. All right, the beauty about these is you can fish them just about at any depth. You can cast them out, start your retrieve right away, and you can get this thing to coast about a foot underwater. You can also let it sink all the way to the bottom, reel it back up, and you can basically cover any depth. There's a bunch of different weights you can get in here, but to start off with, I would just stick with a 1/4 ounce weight, right? Because you can just let it sink all the way to the bottom if you need it to get deeper. One thing that you guys should be cognizant about when purchasing these is the different style blades. Now there's 3 different style blades, right? There is the willow leaf blade, which is, I guess, pretty aerodynamic, and it's thinner, and it's used for a faster retrieve, right? So you want to probably use these in clear water or in the summer and fall months of fishing where the bass are more active. These displace water as they spin, and they shine, right, attracting the fish. The next one is the Colorado blade. The Colorado blade, notice, is more shaped like a teardrop. It's wider, and it also displaces more water, and since it's wider, your retrieve is gonna be a lot slower, right? So you probably want to use this in either murkier waters or maybe lower light conditions where you need to make a lot of vibrations in the water to attract the fish. The third one is the Indiana blade. I personally haven't used it, but it's basically the in-between of the Colorado blade and the willow leaf blade. So I imagine you could fish it faster than the Colorado leaf blade, or you can fish it a little bit slower than the willow leaf blade. Now there's a multitude of colors, but primarily there's two, right? There's the copper, which is used for lower light conditions, which can be anywhere from dusk and dawn, or serious overcast. That's when you want to use the copper colored blades. Whereas the silver ones, the traditional silver ones, you want to fish in clear waters with extreme light conditions, a nice sunny day or what have you. Now there's also a bunch of different colors, but generally they're just painted on and they're just there to match the style of bait fish that you're trying to imitate. All right, my two recommendations as far as brands go is either a Z-Man spinnerbait or a Strike King KVD spinnerbait. These two I've used quite often, and I haven't really had any huge issues with them. And they're both, I believe, fairly cheap, probably under, I think these are under $5. I think these are like $6. I don't know. But give these a try. You guys won't be sorry. These work. As far as colors go, it depends on where you're fishing. If you're fishing clear waters, you want to stick with natural colors. I like to use white, and I like my trailers. These are Zoom Super Flukes. I like my trailers to match the color of the spinnerbait that I'm using. You actually don't need a trailer, but I recommend them. I believe they get you a couple more bites. Whereas in the darker water, you want maybe a white and a chartreuse, which once again, I'm using a Super Fluke here, and the color of the fluke matches the colors of the spinnerbait. You can also use darker colors like maybe a dark blue, a June bug, black even, and they would probably work just as well. All right, those are my recommendations. It's too perfect for there not to be a bass in there. Oh, got him. Yeah. Told you those. Too perfect. Smashed it. I knew I'd get one of you guys in there. Heck yeah. All right, my friend. That was beautiful. Ah, look at that. Nice little pound. All right, the third and final bait that I recommend that any bass angler is gonna have in their bag is good old-fashioned stick baits. So there is numerous brands, numerous sizes of stick baits that you can use, but they all pretty much do the same exact thing. All right, I predominantly, as far as brands go, I predominantly fish mainly two brands. The first is the good old-fashioned Yum Dinger. The second is the Gary Yamamoto, which started it all. The main difference between these is one has a higher salt content and is heavier, whereas the other one is just a basic worm, right? So for most applications, I'll use the good old-fashioned Yum Dinger. But if I'm whacking rigging and I'm fishing deeper water, then I'll switch to the Yamamoto because it'll sink just that much faster. Now for the stick baits, I highly recommend two rigging options. The first one is going to be the Texas rig. Texas rig is pretty simple. There's only three things you need, right? One is a pack of worms. Two is, my recommendation is either a 3/0 extra wide gap hook or a 4/0 extra wide gap hook. I generally use the 3/0 for 5 inches and under, and I use the 4/0 for anything 6 inches or over. The last thing you're going to need is some bullet weights. These ones are lead. These are 1/4 ounce, which I wouldn't really, I've only had a need to go over 1/4 ounce once in my life. So I would just, since you're just starting out, just start off with 1/4 ounce. There's lead weights, steel weights, and tungsten weights. The lead weights are probably the cheapest, and honestly, you're going to lose a lot of these. But the steel weights are a little bit more expensive, and if you want to go tungsten, you can get 3 of these for probably about $6. I believe these bullet weights cost me like $2, and I got I believe 12 of them. Now for rigging the Texas rig, the first thing that you want to do is you want to take your bullet weight, you want to put the narrow end on the line first and then run it through, right? Because you want the fatter end of your bullet weight to sit right on top of the worm. Second, you're gonna tie on your extra wide gap hook. You're gonna take your worm, you're gonna take the head of the worm, right? The head, the smaller tapered end is the tail. So you wanna take your worm, put it right through the tip of the hook, run through about 1/4 inch, and then run it through the side. Slide it all the way up your hook until you hit these bends. Then you want to twist it while you're pulling it up towards the eye of the hook. So you want your worm to cover the eye of the hook and your knot. Then take the worm where it would naturally rest, mark it with your fingers on where that hook should go through at, bend the worm, run the hook through the worm so that you have a nice, straight, natural presentation while it's on the hook. The second thing that I like to do is I like to bury the nose of this hook in the side of the worm so that it remains weedless. To do that, just grab the worm, push it up a little bit, dig that nose of the hook in, and then bam, there you go. Weedless presentation of the good old-fashioned Texas rig. The technique for fishing this is to cast it out, let it sink all the way to the bottom, count 5 to 10 seconds, pop it once or twice, maybe 3 times, I don't know, mix it up. Let it sit there for 5 to 10 seconds, pop it again, and just rinse and repeat, and eventually you'll get some bites. Oh, that's a big one down there. Get some. Woo! Yeah. Woo! Got you free, man. For the second rigging option, which this one works really well. I personally have better experiences with this rig versus the Texas rig, but there's different conditions for both, right? So the Texas rig I like to use in weedy conditions because I mean that thing you can get it through brush, you can get it through weeds, you can bounce it off of rocks, and generally you'll get a couple snags out of the day, but majority of the time you can get it right out. But this version is the wacky rig. There's not much that you actually need to rig up a wacky rig. First is you get some size 2 hooks. I personally prefer these mustad hooks. I don't really have a color preference for red. This is just what they had the last time I was there. Red, black, silver, whatever. I honestly don't think it's gonna matter that much. And then I get the small wacky rig O-rings. These are about $3 for a pack. And if you want to get fancy, you can buy one of these wacky rigging tools. Makes it a little bit easier to get it on the worm, but it's not 100% necessary. I don't have any problems with taking the O-ring and just sliding it on the back. So for the wacky rig, you obviously want to tie your hook on first. You take your O-ring, you take the small part of the worm, right? Big part, small part. Take the small part of the worm, run it through, grab it, and just slide it on up until you get to about the middle of the worm. And you take your hook that's tied on your line, you run this right underneath the O-ring, and you're ready to go. That's it, wacky rig, right? So you just cast this bad boy out. Generally, probably shallower waters, like when you're beating the banks. Cast it out there, let it sink all the way to the bottom. Let it sit there for a couple seconds, just like you would with the Texas rig. Pop it a few times. It'll float back down. Give it 5 to 10 seconds. Pop it a few times, and I'm guarantee you're gonna get a bite on one of these bad boys. Another option for a wacky rig, right? Because this, I mean, where's the hook? It's off to the side, right? So if you want to have a better chance of increasing your hookup ratio, I suggest using 2 O-rings and crossing them. So I'll show you. I already put one on. So I'm going to take this other O-ring, got my fancy smancy tool here, and I'm just going to pop it on like that and see how they're crossed. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to run my hook through one of those crosses, run my hook through the cross, and now my hook is actually in a better location to increase my hookup ratio. And one thing I noticed about this is while you're wacky rigging, you will lose a lot of worms because the fish will bite it right here, and then you go to set the hook and it'll pull it right outside of your O-ring. But when you have two on there, it increases your chances of not losing your hard-earned cash. That's my preferred method, and get a better hook ratio, better chances of keeping your bait. Oh! Mr. Chunk! Oh, heck yeah. Woo! Alright, so that's all I got for you new bass fishermen. Any of you more experienced fishermen, you guys have any tips, anything I missed, some other baits that may be better for new bass anglers, please leave a comment below. Let them know. Let's share our knowledge. Let's get everybody out there catching fish, having a great time, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Alright, don't forget to subscribe, like, hit that notification bell, help a small YouTuber out, and I'll see you next week. Rock out with your rod out.